How's it going, everyone? I'm back. Yeah, this is just a little update, another entry to this devlog, and I guess the main thing to point out is that I haven't honestly made too much new progress in this game development process. It's been pretty busy week this past week. As you might have noticed from the kind of upload of a bunch of random videos, I was also attending a pretty cool performance yesterday. Or on Friday, rather. We'll see how much progress happens over various periods of time as this kind of happens. This is basically just, whenever I have the motivation to put some work into it. But I guess the hope is that as long as some work is being done, and especially once I have a lot of the earlier stage elements of the game kind of planned out, that's kind of the purpose of this design document. And then once more progress is made in the project itself, that'll sort of start carrying its own momentum. And I guess one way of thinking of it is sort of as a sunk cost fallacy. So I'll be able to, have more of that project kind of carrying the momentum on its own, and that'll hopefully allow me to put more effort, more work into the game as it proceeds. But just to kind of show you what I've got going on right now, this is inspired by, or I guess this approach to this game development process is inspired by something that I've done when I was still at school, starting off with a game design document, and then I create a kind of a word outline with a general outline for what the design document should look like, game overview, 2-sentence pitch, 2-minute pitch that goes into a bit more depth about the overall approach I'll be taking in the game. I guess a couple things to point out is that I do want to try to pursue game development using Unity for this project, mainly because while I do have existing experience with using that game engine in prior projects, especially for things like various game jams and the like, I only recently started developing an appreciation for certain techniques that can be taken as far as organizing my code, so that as the project kind of scales and increases in complexity, it'll be a little bit easier to manage the games, or just it'll just be easier to maintain the project over a longer period of time once it starts growing in complexity. So I want to use Unity for that purpose, working with .NET. I have a good amount of familiarity with that framework and with C#. Obviously, Unity's been kind of going through some stuff, and I don't really know exactly what the long-term future of that of that company is, but I don't really expect to be making really any money from this project anyway, so it'll just be kind of a fun thing. I didn't make too many additions to this design document. Aside from there's plenty more thought that needs to continue. But I figure just having an outline for what the enemies are going to look like, what the environments and level designs, I'll probably spend a lot of time on that. Art direction as well. My strong suit isn't art, but hopefully that'll also I guess improve as the project continues. State machines I'll likely spend some time over. That's going to especially relate to the various enemies in the game. And again, maybe if I take the time to really plan things out, this can be a pretty extensive section of the design document. Coding documentation, the idea with that is to really, again, kind of think about my project in terms of various design patterns, try to plan ahead of time how the code needs to get organized, and then effectively just try to translate that structure into the project itself. And so that should hopefully make debugging the project an easier process. Narrative documentation, another way for me to just kind of keep track of the overall story of the game, and maybe I can try to think about ways of expressing the moment-to-moment action of the game as I kind of imagine it. So if that means storyboards, then that's something I could try to dabble with. I don't really have any experience with that, And you'll see even in the appendix, this is kind of like the extent of my own artistic abilities. And even there, I'm kind of underselling myself. I did take a course a while ago, working in various tools like Photoshop and Illustrator and the like. So, if I apply myself, it's something that I can do, but I'm not very efficient when it comes to producing that artwork at all. So it's I figure just opening something up in Microsoft Paint just to get some scribbles down at this stage is really the best approach. So what this is kind of illustrating is that one thing to consider in not just making the gameplay itself of the project kind of fun, but my understanding from a game design perspective is that you always want to try to offer interesting decisions for the player. This is something that was some insight I learned recently, and I should find the book where I learned about that, but it's an old game design book, kind of an interesting read. And interesting decisions that the player makes, and this is just to kind of help in introducing replayability into the project. So I figured even though that the game itself is going to be more of a linear experience in terms of just how the story itself progresses, maybe what I can do to mitigate that a little bit is just introduce different types of stages that the player can play through at each story moment. So the story itself is going to, in general, play out the same way, but then by the time the game is beaten, the player can go back and play through another, a different set of those levels and just have a different experience from there. So that'd be one kind of interesting way to introduce some replayability. I guess, again, as far as the gameplay itself, which I haven't yet described in much detail, but the plan is that it's going to be largely the same as in the first Sergeant Smiles. So just a basic shield gameplay mechanic where at the press of a button that pulls up a shield for a few seconds that Smiles is able to use to deflect different types of enemy attacks. And once that shield collides with, after a certain time limit that the shield is up, it'll disappear, and then that just kind of reduces the number of available shield uses. So whether all of those parts of that mechanic will come into play, we'll see. I might have to find some interesting ways around, like spamming use of that shield. So maybe some sort of cooldown mechanic, as opposed to strictly like a discrete value that decreases the number of times that shield is used. So that's something to consider a little bit there. But in terms of the gameplay itself, I want to keep things simple. It's going to make it easier for me to implement, but also I think just keeping things simple for the player to focus on the gameplay itself and just try to make it introduce the variety through the levels themselves, having some interesting level elements to get through. I think that's going to provide enough interest for the game itself. And I want to try to keep this like a relatively difficult experience, because that's just types of games that I enjoyed playing when I was growing up over the years. I liked platformers, and then when I found out about those virtual console NES games that they sold on those storefronts, that was a ton of fun to play through. And love games like Shovel Knight, Celeste. There's plenty of complexity introduced in those games, but I mean, even with a game like Celeste, the core mechanics are fairly simple. It's just the way that those core mechanics were implemented so beautifully there, and just the techniques that can be done. That's where a lot of that interest comes from in there. So I don't know if the gameplay itself is going to be that rich for this experience, but again, as long as the gameplay, I feel if the gameplay itself is kept to be relatively simple, again, easy enough for me to implement, but also just not to overwhelm the player with a bunch of things that they could do in the game, which could especially be problematic if you're just one person trying to develop these different mechanics I feel like it just helps in kind of focusing the project and keeping things easy to understand there. What else? Oh, and there's just some other stuff. I have like a little section at the bottom of this appendix for random ideas there. So we'll that's basically the main update. I think I recently just like I felt fine earlier this morning, and now all of a sudden I feel like I'm catching a cold, which kind of sucks. So that does, we'll see how that progresses. I should be fine afterwards, but yeah, that's the main update for today. Probably for over the next few weeks, there's going to be plenty more illustrated in this design document. Hopefully I'll be able to try to envision some of the more technical details of the project, and we'll see where things go from there. So this was today's update. Thanks for listening, and again, sorry if I might have overwhelmed you with some of the other videos that I sent out. I don't think it's a secret that I'm pretty passionate about what's going on with Ukraine and everything, and again, like I don't know if I really intend to be making a lot of money off this thing. So as far as like the reputation of that YouTube channel, I don't really care too much. I did it for fun anyway, and it's taught me a lot of valuable things as far as video editing and coming up with these video essays, and assisted me in my abilities in writing. So I mean, all of that I already feel like I've gotten a lot of value just from the experience alone. So we'll see where things go with the channel itself. It might just be a dumping ground for videos, but these devlogs will continue. So take care, everyone, and I'll post again next week.